Hello everybody and welcome to NPC Cast, your place for face-to-face games. My name is Chris and I'm coming to you from sunny Seattle, Washington. And like I do every single week, I brought an NPC along for the ride with me to my right. Hailing from the frozen tundra of the north, he is NPC Del. How are you doing?
I'm pretty jazzed. I'm live and in color.
This is NPC Cast Second Ed. We have some new stuff going on, because we are actually recording video that's going to go up on YouTube for this episode. So if you're listening to this right now in your car, pull out your cell phone, start watching YouTube, go to youtube.com/1000XP during your commute.
Yeah.
You don't want to be one of the last people to be able to see it. You want to be right there in the forefront.
Right. I know when you get into the office, there's that water cooler talk of, did you see NPC Cast? I'm like, see? I heard it.
Yeah.
No.
Now, they'll be like, you don't want to be the one who didn't see NPC Cast. So we're going to try this out for the new year. We also have a little bit of a different format. When we started NPC Cast, the reason we called ourselves the NPCs is because we wanted to assist everyone listening in all things tabletop gaming. So role-playing games, board games, card games, all that stuff. And we want to go back to those roots. And we're going to do that by reaching out to the audience. People like you, asking you for your questions and sort of what you want us to cover. So earlier this week, we actually went out to Twitter and Facebook, and we asked, what sort of things do you want to ask us? Ask us anything.
Yeah, you're the universe. You're the reason the show exists, so you should have a hand in making it.
Absolutely. So if you have any questions about specific things, our opinions, or if you have problems, let's say there's something going on in your campaign and you don't really know how to deal with it and you want our perspective, we'd be more than happy to help you out. Think of us as like your campaign doctors, so to speak.
Yeah.
All right, so that being said, this episode, like all of our episodes, is brought to you by the fine backers over at patreon.com/NPCcast. Patreon is a site that you can go to donate to the show financially if you choose. It's not necessary. Of course, NPCcast will always be free, whether it's on YouTube or on iTunes. But if you do feel like tossing us a couple bucks per episode, you can do that via patreon.com/NPCcast.
Yeah.
Ready to go?
Yeah, you covered everything.
First show of the year. Oh, unfortunately, Aaron is out. The little ones are sick, but he will be back shortly, and he'll be answering some of his opinions. He'll also probably be dissecting our opinions in this episode, so look for his rebuttal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His incorrect rebuttal.
Absolutely. All right, so like I said, we reached out on Twitter, and we reached out on Facebook. So let's go to, are we doing these in any particular order?
Just the order you sent them to me.
We should start with the one from Patreon.
Yeah.
That would make the most sense.
Patreon writes, "Hi, NPC Cast team. I will soon be running an Edge of the Empire game and remember an episode or two talking about the system. Most of my experience is with D&D, and so a bit out of my comfort zone with the new system and dice. However, from going over the core rulebook, it seems like a great system and dice allow players to regularly contribute to the narrative." Correct. My question for you is regarding space battles. I'm just starting to read the rules on this, but if you guys have an old episode or tips on how to put together good space battle encounters, that would be great.
So we don't have an old episode, but we have this episode.
And we're going to take care of you.
So, Del, you were super excited. You actually said I could do a whole episode on this on this alone.
Yes.
Because you have a lot of experience actually running Star Wars Edge of the Empire for a variety of different groups.
Yeah, and a lot of the times I've had to run one-shots or short campaigns, so I have to show off everything in the system, which mandates a space battle to get people that experience as well. Right.
So what are some of your tips?
So there is a... In the main book, there is a list of things you can do, and it is horribly optimized and set up. But we'll link in the show notes to a better PDF I have of just a quick list of everything you can do as both pilot and non-pilot. And it's a great list just because it shows you how much there is to do, moving shields around, manning the guns, manning comms. But the thing to keep in mind is Star Wars is that narrative dice play, where it has advantages and disadvantages. So you can have all sorts of great events come up. And the biggest thing is to not let your players get bogged down by the list that I just said was really awesome.
Right.
And let them just try whatever. So if they say, oh, we want to jam their comms, well, that's totally a thing they can do. And they run a technology check or a slicing check and try and jam the other ship's comms. And that happens in the initiative order when that slicer character comes up, apart from the pilot. It's actually kind of ironic. The pilot in Edge of the Empire ends up getting almost nothing to do, because all they do is just regulate speed and try and maneuver and get the guns to bear.
Right.
I don't agree with the firing arcs that they use in Edge of the Empire. I don't think it works. It's obviously cribbed from their X-Wing game. I usually just jettison that, which, maybe I'm doing it wrong, but I don't think you can do it wrong.
Right.
But yeah, if you just assume everything has a 360-degree arc, because bigger ships like the Falcon and like Star Destroyers have, guns. Star Destroyers have guns all around them, and the Falcon has, guns on turrets. And then things like TIE Fighters and X-Wings should be able to swing around at will. They're star fighters. They're maneuverable.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it's interesting because when I first read this question, the first thing that popped in my mind, and I don't know, we covered it a little bit in our sci-fi Genrenomicon, where we talked about sort of what people expect out of their sci-fi games and their space opera games, actually. But is there a difference in running Star Wars space combat versus something like Star Trek space combat?
Oh, absolutely. Star Wars is combat first. Mm-hmm. And with Star Trek, you have, or any, harder sci-fi type deal that isn't just space fantasy.
Right, like Rogue Trader or something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's a little bit more hard.
Yeah. I think the feeling of big guns comes up a lot more. I think in Star Trek, it's, phasers until the big guns come out, and then obviously Rogue Trader with that Warhammer mystique is going to be all big broadsides and much more naval combat, versus Star Wars tries to evoke aerial dogfighting like we had in the 20th century, as opposed to 19th century naval combat.
Right. Yeah, it was just something that I sort of, decided to kind of break down and think about a little bit more, because when I'm running these games, historically, when you're playing stuff like Traveler, you're playing stuff like Rogue Trader, it's pretty much the pilot makes a couple pilot checks. But like in Star Wars, in the Star Wars universe, the dogfighting element is really pronounced, and you get like this, like, ships versus ships flying around trying to outmaneuver one another. And so I think it has more of like that action-centric vibe and less of those like, this is a tense moment. Because Star Trek, it's like, we're in combat, this is a tense situation. But like in Star Wars, it's like an exciting situation.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you a PDF to put up on our Patreon. I created a little one-page range band sheet. So you have characters who are engaged, near, medium, extreme range. And the best advice for actually running a Star Wars game is going to be take the players, not their capital ship, but their flagship. So if you have, say, a freighter and one player has an X-Wing, lock the freighter to close range and say, this is close range. And if the TIE fighter is, say, 4 bands away, just place the TIE, 4 bands away. And then if the TIE gains on them, you just move the TIE up 2 spots. If they put space on them, you move the TIE back 2 spots. But locking one ship as the fulcrum of the entire space battle is going to make it so much easier to navigate that space and to have players have an idea of what they are doing. Yeah. I think you've seen my range band sheet, the laminated one. It's really helpful when you can lock down the center ship and then everybody else moves around it.
Yeah. I think that's a good sort of technical tip for when you're running Star Wars: Edge of the Empire. And then again, I think it comes down to the best tip that we really can offer you is think about the tone and scope of the thing that you're trying to emulate, right? And if you're a Star Wars game and you have people who, they just watched, Rogue One, and they really want this action movie centric Star Wars campaign, then give them that and try to, use the rules as a guideline to help with that. But like Del said, get rid of things that aren't helping you further that theme, like firing arcs, for example. Thank you very much for your question, Patreon. We really, really appreciate it. Let's go to Twitter now. All right. And we had a couple questions that I think are kind of softballs.
Yep.
So the first thing is from Muffin Lord SA. They asked, what's up with Del and Aaron's Twitter handles?
Great question, Muffin Lord. My Twitter handle ANRLizzie is the ANR is for Android Netrunner, and Lizzie is Elizabeth Mills, who is a major character in the fiction. I snagged that handle and switched up because I'm trying to branch out into streaming Netrunner. I just got my green screen, and I got OBS configured the way I want it so that I can have me in the corner appearing as if I'm in a corporate boardroom if I'm playing Corp, or in like Aesop's pawn shop with, tech hanging behind me. Just because I wanted to put on a great Netrunner stream of live streaming either Jinteki games or actual play with a camera pointed at the table. Just be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, and you're like, what 2016, it kind of sucked, but what it really needs is a better Netrunner stream.
That's true.
That's the one thing that you could improve 2016 with.
You gotta start small.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
But yeah, I want to bring real good, jocular Netrunner commentary, and so I kind of just rebranded everything and set it up so that I'll be able to just tie all that in, and then hopefully we can even maybe propagate some of that to the NPC Cast main YouTube page.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Extra content.
And then Aaron will have to answer when he gets back. His Twitter handle is now Aaron Donna, which is his full name. And maybe he's just trying to really optimize his personal brand. Hashtag brand goals. So he might just really be trying to focus on the Dono name. So I think he's actually come up with a logo as well. It involves him, Anna, and their two lovely children. So I'm just joking about the logo. But he should probably work on that.
Yeah, it's 4 A's making a diamond. Or making a compass. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Okay, next up, what is love from Pixel Protectors?
This is one I struggled with, and I came up with love doesn't belong in your role-playing game. Just
okay.
Don't have romantic subplots. It's cringy and creepy pretty much all the time. So love is something that has no place at the table.
Okay. I was going to say it's like a chemical reaction in your brain between two, humans, but, or that too. Dell took it from the RPG perspective, which is appreciated because this is a show primarily about RPGs. So, moving on.
Fake Geek Dad writes, what's the one thing you've learned from each other over the course of NPC Cast? Thanks, Fake Geek Dad.
What's the one thing that we've learned from each other? I think I've actually learned a lot about how to run games better. I think that's one of the coolest things about NPC Cast, for me at least, is the fact that every single week I'm sort of forced to think about games in a way that I might not have normally if I wasn't actually recording content for other people. We get questions, for example, like, how do you run space combat in Edge of the Empire? And that's something that I hadn't really considered until someone asked, and I had to record it for the show. So I've learned a lot about how to structure role-playing games, how to sort of use all the tools available at your disposal to run games. That's primarily like a Dell thing. And then with Aaron, I've learned how to let go of my preconceived notions of the narrative and really allow the players to shape and change the way that they play the game. So basically, it's made me a better game master because I'm thinking about it, and then also because I'm learning from two great game masters as well.
Aww.
Yeah, you're welcome.
No. I'm assuming you're counting me twice?
Yeah.
Okay, good. The number one thing I've actually learned a ton from Chris about the technical aspect of video production, audio production, so much behind the scenes stuff, working with web content, and I've actually had to step up my game because I don't want to be embarrassed when I ask Chris for help with something, so I need to have all my bases covered. And he's taught me so much about the behind the scenes production of stuff, which has been obviously immediately applicable to any role-playing games where I want to put in audio features or audio logs that players discover, things like that. But that's what I've learned from Chris. And from Aaron, I've learned not to take my health for granted. No, because I have a hardy constitution, but it's been a learning experience for me in the last 4 years of not everyone is as routinely healthy as you, and I've had to adjust my worldview to understand that.
You're throwing such shade at the boy. You're throwing that's the one thing that like in this 4 years now or whatever we've been doing this. You're like the one thing I've learned is to take vitamin C. Vitamin C is important.
A little bit.
That's incredible. That's such a Dell answer. All right, well there you go. Thank you very much for the question, Fake Geek Dad.
David Barron from Facebook writes, which systems have you used that you think are underrated by the gaming community? That's an excellent question because underrated means something different to everyone.
Right.
But do you have an answer? Because I have an answer.
I mean, I can guess what your answer is. I want to hear your answer first.
All right. Actually, you want to write your answer on a card. Now we can do awesome video. Write your answer, what you think it is.
What I think you're going to say?
What do you think I'm going to say? And then we'll do the Johnny Carson amazing Mento. But yeah, I definitely think underrated is a loaded term. But I can tell you what game I love that I think has many fewer fans than it should. You get your answer locked in?
Yep.
Final answer? All right. My answer is the Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars game. I think is immensely underrated or unduly dismissed.
Like Edge of the Empire?
Edge of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, Force and Destiny. What did you write?
I wrote Fourth Ed.
Oh. Yeah, that's... I was assuming active systems.
Yeah, but I mean, like, part of being underappreciated might be that it didn't live long enough to see its due.
That's fair. Yeah, I do agree that Fourth Ed didn't get a fair shake by the community, and there were some challenges they faced. But I think somehow Fantasy Flight Games, I don't know if they just needed to make the DICE app free or, the DICE are just this huge stumbling point for so many people, and they dismiss it. They're like, I'm not paying $13 for one set of dice, or whatever their sticking point is, or I don't like the non-binary resolution. But I think that Edge of the Empire, I'm going to call it Edge of the Empire, but it's the Fantasy Flight Game Star Wars role-playing system. Edge of the Empire is this absolute revelation, and the first time your player sees that they can fail and still have a good thing happen is brilliant. And the fact that the Force die has the same number of light side and dark side pips, but there are more sides with dark side pips, showing that the dark side is easier to access but not stronger, is like that's a sort of little touch. You're like, these guys really had it together and really, made this system work. And if you ever get the chance, grab the beginner's game, because it does come with dice and characters and an adventure and maps. It is so different, and it takes a little bit to grok, and maybe that's it, that there's that challenge. But I could gush about Edge of the Empire forever. I love, love, love this game, and if you haven't given it a fair shake because those dice are weird, and granted, they're weird, please do so. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's a really good system. I wouldn't... This is a hard question for me for a couple of reasons. A, I don't like having opinions. But
I think many games are underrated.
But B, honestly, like I'm not really familiar enough with the sort of the underlying opinion of games. I am not a person who goes on a lot of role-playing game forums and kind of gauges the temperature of what people are feeling about specific products. For example, if you were to ask me, do I think that Age of the Empire is underrated? I would say no. Everyone I know that plays it loves it, right? But that's a very limited scope. That's the people that I interact with, like, love that game. So it's very difficult for me because I can think of a lot of games. Like, for example, I don't know a lot of people personally who play the Gumshoe games, and I think the Gumshoe games are phenomenal. Now, how are they rated by the community overall? I honestly don't know. I don't know if people are really think that they're as awesome as I do. I would, I've talked about it a bunch on the show, but I think Hillfolk is also something that I think is really awesome. And since the Kickstarter came out, you haven't heard a lot about it.
Do you think it deserves more fans? Like, let me redirect the question from what is underrated to what game system should be a lot more famous than it is.
Again, it would require me to know the level of famous stuff, but I would say that Hillfolk to me is a wonderful system, and the reason I think it's so amazing is because it does something that as far as my scope of what role-playing games do, it does something that other games don't do, and it focuses on a very specific thing. The same reason I like Gumshoe is because it focuses on a very niche genre within the role-playing game sector, right? So to me, it's shocking that I haven't heard a bunch of fanfare, and you haven't seen like, you know, a million like Hillfolk expansions or because Hillfolk is part of OGL. I don't think it's exactly the OGL license, but Hillfolk is an open source system. That was one of the Kickstarter stretch goals, actually. So people can make Hillfolk content, and I haven't seen a lot of it, and I wonder why. Because I really, really like that system. Now I happen to be working on like a Hillfolk card hack, but to me that's something that I would have expected to see and didn't get see a lot of. Okay, so I would say like Hillfolk is, to me, I guess, an underrated. Again, I think that as far as I've seen, I think it's like critically acclaimed. I've read a few posts about it that didn't really like it because like the combat system is like, it's very, very light, which means that it doesn't really try to be balanced or like mathematically satisfying. It is what it is. But the system is cool and I like it. And I would say the same thing probably with like Gumshoe, right? Like I love that system. So those would be kind of what I would mention. But again, like I don't pay attention to what's popular. I probably should, you know, but like for me, I like to have, you know, all jokes aside, I like to sort of bring my opinions about stuff. And, you know, this show isn't really like, we're not reporting on like, oh, in the forums, people said this about blah, 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 you know?
Yeah, we're not reading press releases of like, this is coming out from Wizards, this is coming out from Chaosium, this is coming, you know, we're not...
Yeah. We do a little bit of that.
A little bit.
Aaron, I think, is the... Again, he decided that he's not here. Aaron, I think, is the one who consumes the most information and sort of... Like, if I went to Aaron, I was like, hey, do people like 13th Age? He could be like, here's what people say about 13th Age, and he would know. I don't conduct that sort of research.
Yeah.
But I will now.
Yeah, it's a fine line to walk, because you don't want to just read and disagree with people and be mad at them. But you do need to have somebody who's an advocate for you to go, oh, this is new and this is why it's awesome. And this is new and this is why it's awesome, to keep you hyped about other releases, which thankfully Aaron will do for us, so we don't have to go into those wretched hives of scum and villainy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so next question.
Amy C. Goodenough, a.k.a. Goonwolf, writes, how'd you get into RPGs? What makes you love them? Where is this industry going? And what are your gaming New Year's resolutions?
All right, so let's take those one at a time. And first we'll start with how you got into RPGs. I'll start with my story. Dell is actually an android, so he's going to have to actually come up with a story on the spot. But my story is real, because I'm a real human being. So basically, when I was younger, I played NES games, and I really loved a game called Shadowgate. And it had another game that was sort of, it's like its sister game called Deja Vu, and basically they're like point and click, you know, adventures on the NES. And I played these a lot. And then a person moved across the street from me. This is probably when I was like 9 or 10. And they told me about this thing called Dungeons and Dragons. And it sounded neat. You know, you get to make up your own stories and make up your own adventures and all those types of things. And when they kind of showed me a character sheet and showed me how the structure of the game works, I'm like, oh, this is just like those NES games. This is just like Shadowgate. Cool. And then so that kind of like started my process of like wanting to get into role-playing games, because I love the idea of using my imagination and doing make-believe and making up stories. I saved up money and I went to a gaming store. It was called Fantastic Games and Toys. It was in Linwood, Washington. And it was the first game store I ever went to. I looked them up in the phone book, because this was a long time ago. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll go there. I called him, like, do you have role-playing games? Do you have Dungeons & Dragons? Yes. Okay, cool. I went there. The owner of the store sold me like a 9 or 10-year-old kid on GURPS instead. Because GURPS could...
I love this story.
GURPS could be anything. You could do it, you know, space. You could do it, you know, dinosaurs. You could do it fantasy. Whatever you wanted. You can do it modern. And so it seemed like a much better value. So I picked up GURPS and sort of didn't really, you know, grok how to play it too much. But in the back of the book, in my edition of GURPS, I'm not sure what book it was, but it had like a choose your own adventure for how to like walk through a basic session. And so that's kind of how I got my start into role-playing games. I found another local store near me, one that opened up. So I would go there and kind of hang out, and that's where I got my first actual D&D campaign. I was part of a game that was taking place with some of the people from that store. And then kind of from there it went into Magic the Gathering, and then I was really hooked into the gaming scene, and then it kind of blew up. But it all started from, a person moving across the street from me with D&D books. And it wasn't like, they didn't even play that much. It was their older brother that played. So it's really like your quintessential, like, my friend's older brother played D&D, and we got a hold of his books. I used to pay their sister in chocolate milk to steal ElfQuest character sheets for me from him, because this was back before like computers and printers and stuff. And so the ElfQuest character sheets were very valuable because they had a little paper doll, so you just had to like draw in like the clothes, and you had like the cool character drawing. So I had to bribe them for ElfQuest character sheets. That's how I got into role-playing games. What about you, Del?
My mom was doing a autograph signing at a bookstore, and I was still young enough that I had to be around her. I couldn't just stay home. And there was a first edition AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide over in the sci-fi section where I was poking around. And I sat in the corner, sitting Indian style, just going through the DMG. Had no idea how to run the game or even what it was, but there was pictures of dragons, pictures of treasure, and charts. So many charts. And I sat there all afternoon while she was signing books and meeting fans, and just generated dragon hordes. Because this is back when, like, blue dragons will have L, Q, and 2 times X gold, treasures, and reference those charts.
Right.
And just generated treasure all day. I didn't have any dice yet. I just had the book, so I would just pick from the list what seemed appropriate off of the L chart and the Q chart.
How did that transition into like your first actual game?
So I had these 2 books. I also grabbed the player's handbook and still had no idea what it was or what I was doing. And later on, I would be in class in high school. I was reading Hitchhiker's Guide, and one of the other people in the class was like, "That's such a good book." And we started talking, and he's like, "Well, this is magic," and got me into magic. He's like, "We're gonna come over to my place on Saturday. We're gonna play magic and play some D&D." I'm like, "I have the D&D books," and I showed up with them, and they were already playing 2nd edition. So it was not a perfect fit, right. But quickly got into swing of things, and it has been my cross to bear the rest of the time.
So what is it, to follow up with Gunwolf's question, is what is it that you love about role-playing games? What has sort of kept you playing role-playing games, the whole up until now?
I really like telling stories. It's always been, I like telling stories, and so getting a chance to write a story that I don't know the end of, and I don't have to figure out the end of. Right. I just make you people do it. Yeah. Is perfect. It is, I get to set up my little army mans on the board, and the other players come in and knock those army men over, and we help collaboratively decide what that means. And that is the essence of why I love running games and why I'm stuck behind the screen. I
never really put it together like that. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was actually just talking to someone about some of my, and this kind of goes with Gunwolf's question as well. I was talking about my 2017 goals, and one of the things that I'm trying to get better at is finishing what I start. And I'm one of those creative people who has a lot of projects going on, and because I have so many interests and so many passions, I get pulled in different directions, and I never really quite follow through on everything that I want to be doing or think I should be doing. And the storytelling in role-playing games is like that. You get to come up creatively with the story hook, and then you don't have to finish the story yourself. Like, other people are going to basically finish it for you, or help you finish it at least. Yeah. So that's a really interesting way of looking at it. For me, the thing that really captured my imagination with role-playing games is the idea of playing make-believe, of getting to pretend that you are someone else who, not just like the power fantasy of like I get to pretend I'm like strong or whatever. Like, that's not so much it. It's just like, to me, it's kind of like the same thing that made me like a drama nerd. I love the idea of like thinking about how other people would react to situations and sort of in the role play elements, like literally the role play part. And that's kind of a thing that you get with role-playing games that you don't get with other stuff. I mean, I love the storytelling aspects as well, but like, if you really had to, pin me down as, do I want to be a player or do I want to be a game master, and I could only choose one, I would choose to play, because it's really fun for me to inhabit a character and pretend that I'm part of that world that they're in. So, awesome. Where the industry is going. So I'm assuming that you meant sort of the role-playing game industry. Although I'll sort of bring it back to the overall board game industry, because I think that the board game industry right now is experiencing a lot of growth, and its tabletop games are getting more and more popular. And in fact, what I'm excited about this week is going to tie into how sort of mainstream games are becoming. But I think that we're going to see that growth, and we're going to see it just get bigger and bigger. There's a lot of people who talk about like a bubble within like the board game community, and I think the people who are talking about that are the smaller independent publishers and designers who are using avenues like Kickstarter. And I think that it's possible there's going to be like a Kickstarter bubble, which I hope does not burst before we launch our game, The Last Garden, but who knows. But I think that like overall the gaming scene is just going to continue to get healthier and healthier, because geeks and nerds are becoming more mainstream. You see it in comic books, you see it in television shows, you see it in movies. And gaming is part of that. Gaming is a way for people who traditionally maybe don't have all of the social avenues that they can go into to meet new people and to interact with other people. Gaming is a way to bring people together and as part of community. And I think that even though geek culture is getting bigger and bigger, there's still this need for like getting out and socializing, because we're human beings and we like to be with other human beings. And gaming is the way to do that. And so you're starting to see more gaming cafes, more gaming parlors, spaces that you can go to enjoy games. Now, role-playing games specifically, I think are in a little bit of a weird spot, because right now they're being kind of overshadowed by this board game boom. I think there's a lot of awesome new games coming out, new role-playing games coming out. There's a lot of new, fresh designers who are giving role-playing games different takes and doing sorts of really interesting, unique, independent projects for role-playing games. But I think that like they're, I guess, overshadowed is the best way to say it. I don't think necessarily that they're getting the same growth that board games are. So by comparison, it looks like they're being left behind. But I still think there's a thriving like role-playing game community. It's just that the board game community is really big.
Yeah, my thing where I see the industry going is there's going to be a reckoning with role-playing games, because the tools to create and interact with video game role-playing games are getting so advanced. Shadowrun, the video game, came out and has a complete suite that shipped with the game to create your own Shadowrun runs with NPCs and dialogue and being able to put all that in. And I just saw this thing, the Play Table, which is, you remember that Microsoft Surface video of the D&D thing? That's actually going to happen.
Yeah.
Or we're getting there. We're getting there.
Right.
And what it's going to come down to is the first role-playing game to crack the nut of how to get people together and have everybody's on their tablet or their phone with their character sheet interacting with a interactive medium at the role-playing table where they're still talking and doing things like that. The first group to crack that for local multiplayer is going to make a lot of money, and all the other RPGs are going to not be able to do that anymore and be on paper. It's gonna be like how did the last Buggy Whip manufacturer go out of business? It's like slowly and then suddenly.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because I wish Aaron was here to talk about this, because Aaron is actually working on his game right now that sort of is that thing. It's like a local multiplayer digital role-playing game through Monocle Society that he's working with. I think you're going to see more of that kind of stuff. I'm not so much of a pessimist, though. Like, I think that there will always be the physical element to it, and I think that I don't think that like digital games are going to completely usurp the tabletop games. I think that even with things like the play table and stuff like that, like people, it's going to be a long time before people adopt that technology in any form of like
right.
in any way that makes a really big impact.
Yeah, I don't disagree that it's going to be a while, but when it happens, that'll be it.
Yeah.
The first company to crack that will have a lead, and nobody else will pretty much be able to put out pen and paper RPGs after devices become ubiquitous enough. That's my belief. That's where that's the question, is where I think it's going.
Right.
I think we're approaching the point where devices and the tools to create adventures are advanced enough that that's what it's going to be from now on, instead of poring over tomes. And whether that's good or bad is left up to you, dear reader.
Yeah, and it might be like it might be cyclical as well. I mean, if you would have asked me, if you would have asked this question about board games, for example, like 15 years ago or 20 years ago, people would be like, "Oh, video games are going to kill board games." Like like board game. Why do you need a board game when I can get together and play Halo with 3 of my friends? But
yeah, there's a neo-Luddite response there, I think. But for instance, all those like little 1,000-chit Battle for North Africa war games, those are all digital now. That actually did kill those. Yes, there's some holdouts, but for the most part, computers automated the annoying part and let people play more games, which is good. But things like Small World and Hive and Ticket to Ride are all on PC, but that's not really the main mode that people consume them. So, it's some things like very involved war games work better on PC, and some things like Small World work better tabletop. So the first person to crack the RPG riddle of how to make it better on computer multiplayer than local pen and paper, they're going to have the leg up. And that's what I think smart RPG companies should be working towards. Yeah,
and I'm someone who I like all manner of games, right? So I am looking forward to that, because if when Aaron's game comes out, I can't remember the name of it. Do you remember the name of it?
I don't. I'm sorry.
He shared the logo with me.
Yeah.
It's like Ark is my game, but his is something I wish I knew. It's like about sort of like, anyways. But that's the interesting thing, because I think that like when in Aaron's design is like that. Like, I want to play his game. I want to have that digital version. However, I also want my pen and paper versions. Just like I love playing Overwatch and WoW, but I also want to play board games like The Gallerist. So it's going to be all over the place. It's going to be interesting to see, though, and we'll see how it goes. And then lastly, from Goonwolf is, what are your New Year's gaming resolutions?
I would like to play less games.
Okay.
Now, the reason I say that is because I don't want to play games less times.
Mm-hmm.
I want to play less games. I want to play less games, and I want to really dig into those games because, for instance, I have XCOM, which I really like. I've gotten to play it maybe 4 times now, but every time it's always been with at least one new player, and we have to explain it and play on easy so that it's manageable. And I want to really dig into a small collection of games, hopefully ones that I have, but things like I'm playing Aaron's Seafall campaign, which it's his game, but really dig in and really get the most wring the most enjoyment out of a game, because other than party games, like I love Word on the Street, I love Codenames, but other than those, I really don't get to play any one game a bunch of times. So I want to play fewer games, but more iterations of those.
I think that's like a common resolution. In fact, I don't know if you're familiar with, Board Game Geek does a challenge every year, the 10 by 10 challenge, which, as you can guess, it's pick 10 games and then basically play each one of those 10 times, and that's like the goal. And then there's a whole
that's hard.
There's a whole thread in Board Game Geek, and people check in and like give you their progress and stuff.
It sounds easy, but it also immediately I'm like, no, that's super hard.
Yeah, that's 100 individual plays or something over the course of 52 weeks or whatever. So I mean, it's playing a lot of games, but it's definitely an interesting challenge. It's funny because I'm actually the opposite. My initial goal that I wrote down when it comes to my resolutions and my New Year in gaming is to play more games. And I was like, I want to play 100 games, 100 different games in 2017. Now, I'm starting with 100 different games. I'll let you know around June if I'm going to change that or not. But for me, I just want to experience more. And as someone who is a game designer and looking to be a game publisher in the near future, I just want to play more stuff. And I think that really deep down, if I was really to like, you know, break apart why I'm making that my goal and what I'm really trying to accomplish with that, is I want to play games more frequently. And I want to make sure that I'm setting aside time and dedicating time to play games more often. Because I think, you know, when you're prioritizing your adult life and when you're a content creator and when you're doing all these other things, you know, it's like when crunch time happens, the first thing that I wipe off is game time. And as someone who's in the gaming community and trying to create gaming content and create games themselves, I think that's really dangerous precedent to set, to be like, I am going to forego playing games for a month so I can make my gaming, you know, YouTube channel. Like, that doesn't seem like it's very smart or a good way to go about things. So I want to get like a regular gaming night, and that's really my focus, is going to try to be with regularity, play some more games, more often at least. So there you go. We should go.
I think it's interesting. We both want to play more games, and it's just the number of titles that's different,
right? And the fact that like we obviously didn't like say we want to play games together.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have two people who are sitting literally on the same couch who both are like, man, I wish we could play games more often. Oh well, see you, Del.
Yeah.
Like,
have a good one.
See you next week. Yeah. So it will happen. We're gonna play more games, and that's kind of my goal. The cheat though is that, and I mentioned this on the BGG Con episode, like I played probably like 24, 25 different games at BGG Con. So cons, like especially ones that are very game centric, like BGG Con, where you're playing a lot, can really ramp that number up quickly. The 10x10 thing is definitely an interesting challenge, though. Maybe you could do like a 5x5. That'd be like a little bit more manageable, and then maybe step it up a notch or something. But awesome question. Thank you very much, Goonwolf, for responding via Twitter. We really appreciate it. All right, so thank you everyone who was involved with our first episode of the new year. We really appreciate it. Future episodes of NPC Cast, I guess, advanced NPC Cast, a NPC, future episodes that will feature questions from you as well. Sometimes we'll have a topic, and we'll sort of talk more broadly about things. They won't be as sort of rapid fire as this episode was, but it's a new year, and we kind of wanted to get through some of your stuff. And it's been a while since we've got to answer your questions directly.
I love mailbag episodes. I love hearing from the people.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So make sure you continue to message us on social media. You can reach out to us on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @NPCChris. Del?
I am @ANRLizzy.
If you want to tweet questions at our the full cast page, it is @NPCcast on Twitter. We are on Facebook as well. What's that Facebook URL? Del?
It is.
I don't know. Who else would I be looking at?
It is facebook.com/NPCcast.
And if you want to send us an email, you can send us an email to thenpccast@gmail.com. We're not done yet. We're going to tell you the things that we're excited about, and we're going to do that right now. This week, I'm excited about something that happened last night, and it was pretty awesome. I mentioned it on last week's show that I was excited about it, and it actually happened. It was better than I expected, but I was actually able to take part in a charity event for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Puget Sound. We did a Magic the Gathering tournament featuring Seattle Seahawk player Cassius Marsh. He came into sort of notoriety in the Magic community a little while ago because it went viral that his cards got stolen. And it turns out that he had like $16,000 worth of Magic cards stolen from his car.
He plays Legacy Goblins. God bless him.
Yeah, he had a couple different Legacy decks, a couple of different Modern decks, a bunch of stuff. And when this kind of made the rounds, people were like freaking out. So I reached out to him as part of Mox Boarding House's social media team. And I was like, hey, would you like to do a charity event? And he said yes. And so we held it last night. It was a ton of fun. He showed up early, did an autograph signing for all of the people in attendance. It was really cool to see because, like, a lot of the people there, it was our first ever Magic tournament. Like, a dad came up to me and was like, hey, you know, I just want to let you know, thank you for putting this on. This was a Christmas present to my son and his friend. This is their first ever Magic tournament. They've always wanted to play in an FNM, and this is their first one. And they're also stoked that they got to meet Cassius. So that was really cool. And then partway through, Doug Baldwin, who is a wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, arguably one of the top 10, 12 receivers in the league right now.
Yeah.
Production-wise, showed up. And it turns out that Cassius has been teaching him how to play Magic the Gathering as well. And so Doug sort of watched Cassius's game. They went to our live stream crew and did like an interview where they shared sort of Magic strategies. And then they actually went on stream and played a game. So it is on the Mox Board Game House YouTube page. I'll try to link to it in the show notes here. But you can actually see a match with commentary between two professional football players playing a game of Magic. It is really, really awesome. And it was so cool because a lot of people, I was there during the signing because I was kind of just like helping him out throughout the whole thing. And, you know, people wanted to get pictures taken. So I'm there helping take pictures for people in the signing. But a number of people genuinely walked up to him and said, hey, thank you for like being like an ambassador for the geek community and showing that like we're not all the stereotypical, you know, view of what people think of as geeks. You know, here's like an NFL defensive end, big like tatted up dude who genuinely loves the game of Magic. I got to chat with him during the event, you know, talking to him about when he started playing Magic. He was like 11. You know, he went into a comic book shop, bought like $2.50 worth of cards, and like was hooked ever since then. And he's a genuine avid Magic player, and also happens to be a professional football player, which is awesome.
Yeah, I love the image of him like getting on the player plane, going home from a thing, and just like pushing decks into other people's faces. And it's like, come on, ADB, let's sling some spells.
Yeah, and so he's there's a couple other players that he mentioned that he was trying to like to get teach them Magic, but they haven't all caught on. But it was really cool to see, and we raised a whole bunch of money. I'm not sure on the final count because we had a raffle as well, but over $8,000 for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Puget Sound, and $5,000 of that was donated directly from Wizards of the Coast. So they were on hand as well. So thank you, Wizards of the Coast, for helping us out with that as well. It was a really, really great event, and we want to do more in the future. It was cool, and it was fun to like meet a Seahawk, and it was fun to get retweeted by the Seahawks social media because they have like 1.6 million followers, so that's pretty good. So good luck on the game. Hopefully, by the time you see this, they've already won their final game of the season. So
yeah,
there you go. That's what I'm excited about. What about you, Del?
So I know I said I wanted to play 10 games of XCOM next year. They actually have an expansion that just came out called Evolution.
Oh.
And let me just read from their page here. It complicates your war effort with new mission enemies and invasion plans, as well as mechanics that make your struggles more dangerous than ever. It's basically trying to make the board game just as unflinchingly difficult as the video game, where you just lose over and over and everyone dies.
But the board game is already really difficult.
Yeah, but it just makes it harder by adding more enemies that you can't kill.
But the game is already, like, how many times have you won the XCOM board game?
Well, we play on easy now, because like I said, I have to play with new players, and on easy you can generally get through.
Okay.
Generally it's hard but fair, and that's easy.
Right.
You know, so hopefully we can get to normal and maybe add in the expansion pack, which sounds like it just adds more missions to complete that can help you out, and have some fun. I mean, I love XCOM, the board game. I think it's the next evolution of where board games can go, given the way it uses the app.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited for this expansion, and hoping to jam some games, adding it in soon.
Awesome. Well, that has been our show. Thank you very much for listening and or watching. If you have been listening on iTunes, we really appreciate it. You can, of course, subscribe on iTunes. You can also, by the way, when we're doing these videos, I keep looking right there.
That's not where the camera is.
That's not, the camera's up there.
Yeah.
So that's going to be really awkward. I'm sorry. But if you've been listening on iTunes, thank you very much. You can, of course, subscribe on iTunes. You can also give us a review on iTunes. If you give us a 5-star review, Dell will read it on the air in the voice of your choice. If you've been watching this on YouTube, thank you very much. We ask you to subscribe as well. Like this video. Comment below if you want things or want us to answer questions in the future.
Oh, you're leaving comments on.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You live on the edge.
No. Our YouTube channel. So our YouTube channel is youtube.com/1000XP. Spell it out. We have a very nice comment section.
Oh.
Because we only have like 3,000 followers, so hasn't grown to that big portion yet. But please like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. It really helps us out on the YouTube side. One last thing. Tell your friends about this show. Tell them that we now have a YouTube show, that we're doing this on video as well as audio. And I promise you we have some plans in the future for upping the level of production value on the video side. We're potentially going to be working with some partners in putting together an actual maybe set for the show.
Ooh.
But we didn't have it in time for the new year because the holidays, they were kind of busy. And we're like, well, let's just fire one off anyway. So there you go. On that note, you may now add 1,000 XP to your character sheets and level up.
Yes!
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. They level up because it's a NPC now.
Yeah.
So, like, everything got harder, actually. Yeah. So, like, level 2 is, like, really not very good. We're actually worse than level 1.
Right.
Yeah.
It's tough.
What can you do?